Hello, hello! Welcome everybody to another Grimm's Complete Fairy Tale Storytime Quickie. We're gonna be doing a double feature tale tonight. Dos. We're doing tale 21, Cinderella, and 22, The Riddle. The Riddle is actually not too long. Cinderella actually is a couple pages, so that one's gonna be uh, a little bit of a long one. So I'm sorry if I missed a couple of tales over the past couple days. I went real fucking hard on Friday, and I was sore as fuck, and I passed out. I've been sleeping so much the past couple of days. No joke. I rested so well though. Over the past few days, I rested the best sleep I've ever fucking had. Uh, but we're back to it. I'm gonna be uploading this to YouTube later on if you want to check it out as well. It should be up there probably midnight at best. It usually takes about an hour to upload these things, depending on how long it is. So look forward to that. If you're watching from YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe down below. And as we get into our tale tonight, get cozy, grab your blankie and snackies. It is time for a quickie. Tale 21, Cinderella. The wife of a rich man fell sick, and as she felt that her end was drawing near, she called her only daughter to her bedside and said, "Dear child, be good and pious, and then the good God will always protect you, and I will look down on you from heaven and be near you." Then she closed her eyes and departed. Every day the maiden went out of her to her mother's grave and wept. She remained pious and good. When winter came and the snow spread a white sheet over the grave, and when the spring sprang, when the spring sun had drawn it off again, the man had taken another wife. The woman had brought two daughters into the house with her, who were beautiful and fair of face, but vile and black of heart. Now began a bad time for the poor stepchild. "Is the stupid goose to sit in the parlor with us?" said they. "He who wants to eat bread must earn it. Out with the kitchen wench." They took her pretty clothes away from her, put an old gray bedgown on her, and gave her wooden shoes. "Just look at the proud princess, how decked out she is!" they cried and laughed, and led her into the kitchen. There she had to do hard work from morning till night. Get up before daybreak, carry water, light fires, cook and wash. Besides this, the sisters did her every imaginable injury. They mocked her and emptied her peas and lentils into the ashes, so that she was forced to sit and pick them out again. In the evening, when she had worked till she was weary, she had no bed to go to, but had to sleep by the fireside in the ashes. And since on that account she always looked dusty and dirty, they called her Cinderella. It happened that the father was once going to the fair, and he asked his two stepdaughters what he should bring back for her. "Beautiful dresses," said one. "Pearls and jewels," said the second. "And you, Cinderella," said he, "what will you have?" "Father, break off for me the first branch which knocks you against your hat on your way home." So he brought beautiful dresses, pearls, and jewels for his two stepdaughters, and on his way home, as he was riding through a green thicket, a hazel twig brushed up against him and knocked off his hat. Then he broke off the branch and took it with him. When he reached home, he gave his stepdaughters the things which they had wished for, and to Cinderella he gave the branch from the hazel bush. Cinderella thanked him and went to her mother's grave and planted the brush on it, and wept so much that the tears fell down on it and watered it. And it grew, however, and became a handsome tree. Thrice a day Cinderella went and sat beneath it and wept and prayed, and a little white bird came onto the tree. And if Cinderella expressed a wish, the bird threw down to her what she had wished for. It happened, however, that the king appointed a festival which was to last 3 days, and to which all beautiful young girls in the country were invited, in order that his son might choose himself a bride. When the two stepsisters heard that they too were to appear among the number, they were delighted, called Cinderella, and said, "Comb out our hair for us, brush our shoes, and fasten our buckles, for we are going to the festival at the king's palace." Cinderella obeyed, but wept, because she too would have liked to go with them to the dance, and begged her stepmother to allow her to do so. "You go, Cinderella?" she said. "You are dusty and dirty, and would go to a festival? You have no clothes and shoes, and you would dance?" As, however, Cinderella went on asking, the stepmother at last said, "I have emptied a dish of lentils into your ashes for you. If you have picked them out again in 2 hours, you shall go with us." The maiden went through the back door into the garden, and called, "You tame pigeons, you turtle doves, and all you birds beneath the sky, come and help me to pick the good into the pot, the bad into the crop." Then 2 white pigeons came in by the kitchen window, and afterwards the turtle doves, and at last all the birds beneath the sky came whirring in and crowding in, and alighted among the ashes. And the pigeons nodded with their heads, and began pick, 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 and the rest began also pick, 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 and gathered all the good grains into the dish. Hardly had 1 hour passed before they had finished, and all flew out again. Then the girl took the dish to her stepmother, and was glad, and believed that now she would be allowed to go with them to the festival. But the stepmother said, "No, Cinderella, you have no clothes, and you cannot dance. You would only be laughed at." And as Cinderella wept at this, the stepmother said, "If you can pick 2 dishes of lentils out of the ashes for me in 1 hour, you shall go with us." And she thought to herself that she most certainly cannot do when she most certainly cannot do. When the stepmother had emptied the 2 dishes of lentils amongst the ashes, the maiden went through the back door into the garden and cried, "You tame pigeons, you turtle doves, and all you birds under the heavens, come and help me to pick the good into the pot, the bad into the crop." Then 2 white pigeons came into the kitchen window, and afterwards the turtle doves, and at length all the birds beneath the sky came whirring and crowding in, and alighted amongst the ashes. And the doves nodded with their heads and began to pick, 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 pick. And the others began to also pick, 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 and gathered all the good seed into the dishes. And before half an hour was over, they had already finished, and all flew out again. Then the maiden carried the dishes to the stepmother, and was delighted, and believed that she might now go with them to the festival. But the stepmother said, "All this will not help you. You cannot go with us, for you have no clothes and cannot dance. You should be ashamed. We should be ashamed of you." With this she turned her back on Cinderella, and hurried away with her 2 proud daughters. As no one was now at home, Cinderella went to her mother's grave, and beneath the hazel tree she cried, "Shiver and quiver, little tree, silver and gold throw down over me." Now the bird threw a gold and silver dress down to her, and slippers embroidered with silk and silver. She put on the dress with all speed, and went to the festival. Her stepsisters and the stepmother, however, did not know her, and thought she must be a foreign princess, for she looked so beautiful in the golden dress. They never once thought of Cinderella, and believed that she was sitting at home in the dirt, picking lentils out of the ashes. The prince went to meet her, took her by the hand, and danced with her. He would dance with no other maiden, and never let go of her hand. And if anyone else came to invite her, he said, "This is my partner." She danced till it was evening, and then she wanted to go home. But the king's son said, "I will go with you and bear you company." for he wished to see to whom the beautiful maiden belonged. She escaped from him, however, and sprang into the pigeon house. The king's son waited until her father came, and then he told him that the strange maiden had leapt into the pigeon house. The old man thought, can it be Cinderella? And they had to bring him an axe and a pickaxe that he might hew the pigeon house to pieces. But no one was inside it. And when they got home, Cinderella lay in her dirty clothes amongst the ashes, and a dim little oil lamp was burning on the mantelpiece. For Cinderella had jumped quickly down from the back of the pigeon house and had run to the little hazel tree, and there she had taken off her beautiful clothes and then laid them on the grave. And the bird had taken them away again. And then she had placed herself in the kitchen amongst the ashes in her gray gown. Next day, when the festival began afresh, and her parents and the stepsisters had gone once more, Cinderella went to the hazel tree and said, shiver and quiver, my little tree, silver and gold throw down over me. Then the bird threw down a much more beautiful dress than on the preceding day. And when Cinderella appeared at the festival in this dress, everyone was astounded at her beauty. The king's son had waited until she came, and instantly took her by the hand and danced with no one but her. When others came and invited her, he said, she is my partner. When evening came, she wished to leave, and the king's son followed her and wanted to see into which house she went, but she sprang away from him and into the garden behind the house. There stood a beautiful tall tree on which the most magnificent hung the most magnificent pears. She clambered so nimbly between the branches like a squirrel that the king's son did not know where she had gone. He waited until her father came and said to him, the strange maiden had escaped from me, and believed she had climbed up the pear tree. The father thought, can it be Cinderella? And had an axe brought and cut the tree down. But no one was on it. And when she got into the kitchen, Cinderella lay there amongst the ashes as usual, for she had jumped down on the other side of the tree and taken the beautiful dress to the bird on the little hazel tree and put on her gray gown. On the third day, when the parents and sisters had gone away, Cinderella went once more to her mother's grave and said to the little tree, shiver and quiver, my little tree, silver and gold throw down over me. And now the bird threw down to her a dress which was more splendid and magnificent than any she had yet had, and the slippers were golden. And when she went to the festival in the dress, no one knew how to speak for astonishment. The king's son danced with her only, and if anyone invited her to dance, he said, she is my partner. When evening came, Cinderella wished to leave, and the king's son was anxious to go with her, but she escaped from him so quickly that he could not follow her. The king's son had, however, used a stratagem and had caused the whole staircase to be smeared with pitch, and there, when she ran down, even the maiden's left slipper, which remained sticking, had the maiden's left sticker, which remained sticking. The king's son picked it up, and it was small and dainty, and all golden. Next morning, he brought it to the father and said to him, no one shall be my wife, but she whose foot fits this golden slipper. Then the two sisters were glad, for they had pretty feet. The eldest went with the shoe into her room and wanted to try it on, and her mother stood by, but she could not get her big toe into it, and the shoe was too small for her. Then her mother gave her a knife and said, cut the toe off. When you are queen, you will have no more need to go on foot. The maiden cut the toe off, forced the foot into the shoe, swallowed the pain, and went out to the king's son. Then he took her on the horse as his bride and rode away with her. They were, however, obliged to pass the grave, and there on the hazel tree sat the two pigeons and cried, turn and peep, turn and peep, there's blood within the shoe. The shoe, it is too small for her. The true bride awaits for you. Then he looked at her foot and saw how the blood was streaming from it. He turned his horse around and took the false bride home again, and said she was not the true one, and that the other sister was to put the shoe on. Then this one went into the chamber and got her toe safely into the shoe, but her heel was too large, for her mother gave her so her mother gave her a knife and said, "Cut a bit off your heel. When you are queen, you will have no need to go on foot." The maiden cut a bit of her heel, forced her foot into the shoe, swallowed the pain, and went out to the king's son. He took her on his horse as his bride, and rode away with her. But when they passed by the hazel tree, the pigeons sat on it and cried, "Turn and peep, turn and peep. There's blood within the shoe. The shoe it is too small for her. The true bride waits for you." He looked down at her foot and saw how the blood was running out of her shoe, and how it had stained her white stockings. Then he turned his horse and took the false bride home again. "This also is not the right one," said he. "Have you no other daughter?" "No," said the man. "There is still a little stunted kitchen wench which my late wife left behind, but she cannot possibly be the bride." The king's son said he was to send her up to him. But the mother answered, "Oh no, she is much too dirty. She cannot show herself." He absolutely insisted on it, and Cinderella had to be called. She first washed her hands and face clean, and then went and bowed before the king's son, who gave her the golden shoe. Then she seated herself on a stool, drew her foot out of the heavy wooden shoe, and put it into the slipper, which fit like a glove. And when she rose up and the king's son looked at her face, he recognized the beautiful maiden who had danced with him and cried, "That is the true bride." The stepmother and the two sisters were terrified and became pale with rage. He, however, took Cinderella on his horse and rode away with her. As they passed by the hazel tree, the two white doves cried, "Turn and peep, turn and peep. No blood is in the shoe. The shoe is not too small for her. The true bride rides with you." And when they had cried that, the two came flying down and placed themselves on Cinderella's shoulders, one on the right and the other on the left, and remained sitting there. When the wedding with the king's son was celebrated, the two false sisters came and wanted to get into favor with Cinderella and share her good fortune. When the betrothed couple went to the church, the elder was at the right side and the younger was at the left, and the pigeons pecked out one eye of each of them. Afterwards, as they came back, the elder was at the left and the younger was at the right, and then the pigeons pecked out the other eye of each. And thus, for their wickedness and falsehood, they were punished with blindness as long as they lived. Wow. Dark tale. As I've said before, I think I said this when I first started up those Grimm's storytell. This Cinderella story is definitely darker than the Disney version of it for sure. But it's not the darkest by far. There's actually a darker version of this called Donkey Skin, which I wonder if it's in this book. I don't think it is. Um, but if it is, that's going to actually be kind of cool because I think you guys will like that one a little bit more. It's a lot darker, but I feel it's like a lot more juicier. It's got more content into it as far as like stories go, and it's one of my favorites. Maybe it could be the donkey. I don't know. I don't. It's we'll see. Uh, I'm gonna be moving into the next one right away because after this I'm heading off to bed also. Um, so tale number 22, 22, 22. The riddle. There one there was once a king's son who was seized with a desire to travel about the world, and took no one with him but a faithful servant. One day he came to a great forest, and when darkness overtook him, he could find no shelter. and knew not where to pass the night. Then he saw a girl who was going towards a small house, and when he came nearer, he saw that the maiden was young and beautiful. He spoke to her and said, "Dear child, can I and my servant find shelter for the night in the little house?" "Oh, yes," said the girl in a sad voice, "that you certainly can, but I do not advise you to venture in. Do not go in." "Why not?" asked the king's son. The maiden sighed and said, "My stepmother practices wicked arts. She is ill disposed towards strangers." Then he saw very well that he had come to the house of a witch. But as it was dark, and he could not go farther, and also was not afraid, he entered. The old woman was sitting in an armchair by the fire, and looked at the stranger with her red eyes. "Good evening," growled she, and pretended to be quite friendly. "Take a seat and rest yourselves." She blew up the fire, on which she was cooking something in a small pot. The daughter warned the two to be prudent, to eat nothing and drink nothing, for the old woman brewed evil drinks. They slept quietly until early morning, when they were readying for their departure, and the king's son was already seated on his horse. The old woman said, "Stop a moment. I will first hand you a parting drop." When she fetched it, the king's son rode away, and the servant, who had to buckle his saddle tight, was the only one present when the wicked witch came with the drink. "Take that to your master," said she. But at that instant the glass broke, and the poison spurted on the horse, and it was so strong that the animal immediately fell down dead. The servant ran after his master and told him what had happened, but would not leave his saddle behind him, and ran back to fetch it. When, however, he came to the dead horse, a raven was already sitting on it, devouring it. "Who knows whether we shall find anything better today?" said the servant. So he killed the raven and took it with him. And now they journeyed onward into the forest and the whole day, but could not get out of it. By nightfall they found an inn and entered it. The servant gave the raven to the innkeeper to make ready for supper. They had, however, stumbled on a den of murderers, and during the darkness 12 of these came, intending to kill the strangers and rob them. Before they set about this work, they sat down to supper, and the innkeeper and the witch sat down with them. And together they ate a dish of soup, in which the cup cut up of flesh of the raven, in which a dish of soup in which was cut up the flesh of the raven. Hardly, however, they had swallowed a couple of mouthfuls before they all fell down dead. The raven had passed on to them the poison from the horse flesh. There was no one else left in the room but the innkeeper's daughter, who was honest and had taken no part in their godless deeds. She opened all doors to strangers and showed him the heaped up treasures, but the king's son said she might keep everything. He would have none of it, and rode onwards with his servant. After they had traveled about for a long time, they came to a town in which was a beautiful but proud princess, who had caused it to be proclaimed that whoever shall set her a riddle which she could not guess, the man should be her husband. But if she guessed it, his head must be cut off. She had 3 days to guess it in, but was so clever that she always found the answer to the riddle given her. Before the appointed time, 9 suitors had already perished in this manner. When the king's son arrived, and blinded by her great beauty, was willing to stake his life for it, then he went to her and laid his riddle before her. "What is this?" said he. "One slew none, and yet slew 12." She did not know what that was. She thought and thought, but she could not find out. She opened her riddle books, but it was not in them. In short, her wisdom was at an end. As she did not know how to help herself, she ordered her maid to creep into the Lord's sleeping chamber and listen to his dreams, and thought that he would perhaps speak in his sleep and discover the riddle. But the clever servant had placed himself in the bed instead of his master, and when the maid came there, he tore off from her the mantle in which she had wrapped herself, and chased her out with rods. The second night, the king's daughter sent her maid in waiting, who was to see if she could succeed better in listening. But the servant took her mantle also away from her, and hunted her out with rods. Now the master believed himself safe for the third night, and lay down in his own bed. Then came the princess herself, and she had put on a misty gray mantle, and she seated herself near him. And when she thought that he was asleep and dreaming, she spoke to him, and hoped that he would answer in his sleep, as many do. But he was awake, and understood and heard everything quite well. Then she asked, "One slew none. What is that?" He replied, "A raven, which ate of a dead and poisoned horse, and died of it." She inquired further, "And yet slew 12. What is that?" He answered, "That means 12 murderers who ate the raven and died of it." When she knew the answer to the riddle, she wanted to steal away, but he held her mantle so fast that she was forced to leave it behind. Next morning, the king's daughter announced that she had guessed the riddle, and sent for the 12 judges, and expounded it before them. But the youth begged for a hearing, and said, "She stole into my room in the night and questioned me, otherwise she could not have discovered it." The judges said, "Bring us proof of this." Then the 3 mantles were brought by the servant, and when the judges saw the misty gray one, which the king's daughter usually wore, they said, "Let the mantle be embroidered with gold and silver, and then it will be your wedding mantle." And that is the end of the riddle. I don't think there's any moral story. There's no like moral to that one, I guess. I mean, it's kind of random. It goes from like him going to a witch's house and then utilizing the poison that she gave to the horse down to the raven and to the murders. So weird. That was actually kind of a kind of 50-50. Like, I don't know how to feel about that one. Looks like my dog is barking up a storm back there. He probably wants to go pee. So I'm going to be ending this stream. Thank you so much. If you were watching from Twitch live, usually I go live around 10 p.m. PST. Um, Hit that follow button. Make sure the notification button is on. It'll let you know when I'm going live. If you want to check out my socials, they're posted down below, right on my Twitch. The usually post up on Twitter when I'm going live and doing all this stuff. So follow me on there. If you're watching from YouTube, please hit the like, subscribe. Make sure you comment. It helps out with the algorithms quite a bit. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I will see you guys next time. And as always, please, 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 please don't stay a stranger. Thank you all so much. And I hope to see you guys all out there in the wilds. All right, bye. Peace.